Episode number 166. The sights he had seen there, with brief snatches of food, and sleep by intervals, shall remain untold. The mad joy over the prisoners, who were saved, had astounded him scarcely less than the mad ferocity against those, who were cut to pieces. One prisoner there was, he said, who had been discharged into the street free, but at whom a mistaken savage had thrust a pike as he passed out. Being besought to go to him, and dress the wound, the doctor had passed out at the same gate, and had found him in the arms of a company of Samaritans, who were seated on the bodies of their victims. With an inconsistency as monstrous as anything in this awful nightmare, they had helped the healer, and tended the wounded man with the gentlest solicitude, had made a litter for him, and escorted him carefully from the spot, had then caught up their weapons, and plunged anew into a butchery so dreadful, that the doctor had covered his eyes with his hands, and swooned away in the midst of it. As Mr. Lorry received these confidences, and as he watched the face of his friend, now 62 years of age, a misgiving arose within him that such dread experiences would revive the old danger. But he had never seen his friend in his present aspect. He had never at all known him in his present character. For the first time the doctor felt, now, that his suffering was strength and power. For the first time he felt that in that sharp fire, he had slowly forged the iron, which could break the prison door of his daughter's husband, and deliver him. It all tended to a good end, my friend. It was not mere waste and ruin. As my beloved child was helpful in restoring me to myself, I will be helpful now in restoring the dearest part of herself to her. By the aid of heaven I will do it. Thus, Dr. Manette. And when Jarvis Lorry saw the kindled eyes, the resolute face, the calm strong look, and bearing of the man, whose life always seemed to him to have been stopped, like a clock, for so many years, and then set going again with an energy, which had lain dormant during the cessation of its usefulness, he believed. Greater things than the doctor had at that time to contend with, would have yielded before his persevering purpose, while he kept himself in his place, as a physician, whose business was with all degrees of mankind, bond and free, rich and poor, bad and good. He used his personal influence so wisely, that he was soon the inspecting physician of 3 prisons, and among them of La Force. He could now assure Lucy that her husband was no longer confined alone, but was mixed with the general body of prisoners. He saw her husband weekly, and brought sweet messages to her, straight from his lips. Sometimes her husband himself sent a letter to her, though never by the doctor's hand, but she was not permitted to write to him. For, among the many wild suspicions of plots in the prisons, the wildest of all pointed at emigrants, who were known to have made friends, or permanent connections abroad. This new life of the doctor's was an anxious life, no doubt. Still, the sagacious Mr. Lorry saw that there was a new sustaining pride in it. Nothing unbecoming tinged the pride. It was a natural and worthy one, but he observed it as a curiosity. The doctor knew that up to that time, his imprisonment had been associated in the minds of his daughter and his friend, with his personal affliction, deprivation, and weakness. Now that this was changed, and he knew himself to be invested through that old trial with forces to which they both looked for Charles's ultimate safety and deliverance, he became so far exalted by the change, that he took the lead and direction, and required them as the weak, to trust to him as the strong. The preceding relative positions of himself and Lucy were reversed, yet only as the liveliest gratitude and affection could reverse them, for he could have had no pride but in rendering some service to her, who had rendered so much to him. All curious to see, thought Mr. Lorry, in his amiably shrewd way, but all natural and right. So, take the lead, my dear friend, and keep it. It couldn't be in better hands.